Well, good evening and welcome to Merit TV Canada's election coverage. We are on the road to April 28th, the big election day coming up in Canada. This is a snap election. Lots of stuff to go over as we been down this path for the last number of days, going through what's evolving in every 24-hour cycle. It seems to be the same reoccurring stories that keep coming to the top. We're trying to bring you the most up-to-date changes that are happening, but it really is coming down to a couple themes that we as Canadians need to decide. Brian, Lilley, and myself will be getting into this in the second half of our program, diving into some of these things in a little bit in detail. But one of the first things that I do want to touch on a little bit deeper, we're going to go into this, is the idea of what is happening in regards to tariffs. How does that affect you and I as Canadians? More importantly, how is our potential next Prime Minister going to handle this? Because this is a big thing. We do have to keep in mind a couple issues. I want to remind you first and foremost, tariffs did not put us into the position that we are in as Canadians economically. We have had several policies over the last number of years that have not been economically great for Canada. I know we went through COVID. There's been a lot of different things that's happened, but we have had a government that has really done a lot of issues where they've printed money. They have ballooned debt. They have, some people might say, been irresponsible with how they budget money. This is really interesting. A couple days ago, we had some major economic reports come out. They were not the greatest for Canada. I know our CPI, if we're looking at our CPI and how much that has raised year over year, it came out that it's raised 2.3% from last year. That is an increase going in the wrong direction. We've also seen it actually raise 0.3% month over month for March. So we are seeing some of these changes that are happening. Food and shelter, they've increased 3.2% and 3.9% respectively, which is faster than the growth of inflation in our country. See, I want to bring this up because we do have a threat in the sense of how are we going to handle tariffs if tariffs continue to be an issue for us. My personal opinion is I do think that Canada and US, we are tied at the hip when it comes to our trade relationship. There may be going through speed bumps right now, but you look at this and I think Kevin O'Leary said it well. We're in a marriage with the United States, and there will be times where there are speed bumps that happen in marriage, and this is one of those times. But the thing is, Canada could have been in a much stronger position to handle these types of issues that come up. I know this might be a once-in-a-generation type of issue where you're dealing with this type of trade war ideas, but Canada, we could have been in a much stronger position if we had the right policies in place. It's going to come down to who has got the better plan to put Canada on an economic path where we can thrive. Right now, I'm not convinced the Conservatives or the Liberals have a great plan. We're still waiting on a policy platform from the Liberals. I understand campaigns often are built on slogans and things you want to get across, and in the Liberals' case, unify Canada against what's happening to us from the United States. But lines like, in my honest opinion, I'm going to vent for a second here, lines like Canadians are at our best when we're unified. Together, we're going to build the strongest economy in the G7. That's not new. We've heard that before. Put more money back in your pockets. Invest in healthcare, childcare, seniors. We'll take bold action on climate and stand strong against Donald Trump's tariffs because we are strong. We are Canada strong. This is the Liberal, they'll show it on screen. This is exactly from the Liberals. My part is, I'm not trying to harp on them. My problem is I want to see an actual plan. I want to see something that's tangible, something where it's like, this is what we're going to do, and these are the results that we're going to see. Because we've heard all of this before. We've heard the same rhetoric from both parties over and over and over again. Over the course of the last several decades, we keep hearing these same ideals. But the problem is we find ourselves in a reality where we are in a really tough situation as Canadians. Our healthcare system is not thriving. Education, there's problems. Immigration, there's issues. Housing costs are surging faster than people are making money. We are having serious problems where our dollar is dropping compared to the USD. Our buying power, our per capita growth rate as a country is the lowest out of the 35 OECD countries. We are not in a strong position. Policy matters, plans matter. Slogans don't mean anything anymore. And I'm here to send the message that Canadians, we have to be able to hold accountable parties and find out what tangibly are you going to be bringing to the table. We're going to be finding this out. I hope we can find out some this evening as the French debates happen, tomorrow evening as the English debates happen. I hope that these leaders are actually going to lay out plans of what they're going to do. Because in my opinion, slogans are no longer enough. They do not cut it anymore. A couple other things that we do need to know about. There is an open letter right now from two RCMP officers. One is retired Sergeant Pete Merrifield and also Detective Paul McMara. He's retired as well. An open letter calling out 9 Liberal former cabinet ministers. Some are also current. Some are in Carney's potential cabinet. He wants to form government. They're calling them out for not doing their job for reporting basically, they failed at their job for reporting a lot of things that were coming through that the Liberal government should have reported. Read that, check that out. That's very important to know. The Green Party will not be a part of the debates tonight. I think this is good. I really think we don't need to pay attention to them. I think at the same time, if we are excluding the PPC, the Green Party, there's no point. It's a 2-party race, but really they do not deserve, they don't even meet the criteria to meet there. So they will not be there as well. Other than that, there's a lot of interesting things that continue to go through the thread of what's happening with tariffs. What are the policies? What are the plans? East versus West sentiment. Independence is a big issue. These are the major themes that keep running. In terms of day-to-day, there hasn't been a lot that's evolved in the last couple days, but stick with us as we continue to bring you what's going on. We're going to be joined by Brian Lilley in just a moment. Stick with us. Well, welcome back to Merit TV Canada's election coverage 2025. We just got 2 more weeks until the federal election. Tonight is the French debates that are happening between the leaders of each party in Montreal as well. Tomorrow evening, Thursday evening, is the debate, which is in English. A couple things have advanced, which is the Green Party. They have now lost their status to actually participate in the debate. There is a lot to discuss. Here is political commentator Brian Lilley of the Toronto Sun. Brian, let's jump right in. So, Brian, the Liberals have been ahead in the polls, but the Conservatives have been making up ground, it seems, in some of the polls over the past weekend. Do you agree?
I do. Daryl Bricker, who's the CEO of Ipsos Global Public Affairs, one of the oldest, biggest polling firms in Canada, he said that, excuse me, that he's picking up momentum. We've seen some polls that a bit closer, still with the Liberal lead. One poll that seems to be an outlier, even has the Conservatives tied, effectively tied, or within 1 point of the Liberals. So, look, at the end of the day, the Conservatives need to win in Ontario. Right now, they're not. They're doing well in BC, another must-win area. They're doing very well in Alberta. We expect that, but they need to rise up in Ontario, and that is just not happening at the moment. So we'll see what these debates are like. We'll see what the last 2 weeks of the campaign are like, but that's got to be their focus.
So there's been a lot of debate about the validity of the polls versus the ground game that you see on the Conservatives. Some people are saying they don't believe the polls. Where do you stand on that question, Brian?
I do believe the polls. And look, I know folks will say, well, 2016, they got it wrong. Hillary, they said was going to win, or Brexit. Look, those were bad interpretations of the polls. I looked at the same polling results and I predicted Donald Trump would win in 2016. I looked at the same Brexit poll results and said, okay, Brexit, the Leave side is going to win. It's interpretation and knowing how the map works in an election. And that's why, the national polling numbers, very interesting, but really what you need to focus on are the regionals. So Conservatives are doing pretty well in Quebec. They're not doing well in Atlantic Canada or Ontario. If they're not going to win in Atlantic Canada, they need more seats in Ontario. And right now, the Liberals are still poised to win the majority of seats in Ontario. So you can only win every seat in Saskatchewan once. You can only win 32 out of 37 seats in Alberta once. They need to win in Ontario. That's got to be the key to this election.
So in your opinion, which polls do you think are the most accurate? How many Canadians are actually being asked in these polling questions?
It ranges from the serious pollsters. It ranges from around 1,000 to, I think Abacus Data recently put one out. It was 2,900 people. Look, there are polls that I think are less legitimate than others. But the main companies, Ipsos, Abacus, Leger, these are well-respected polling firms that have gotten the last several elections right, or minor differences. One party got 18% instead of the 19% predicted in the poll. Well, that's a pretty good, um, you know, determination ahead of time. And do the rallies matter? Absolutely, the rallies matter, and it's a sign of how committed Poilievre's voters are. And even the polling shows that the conservative voters are more committed, more determined to vote than liberal ones. We'll see if that changes, if it solidifies. Poilievre's got to he if he's losing with people over 55, then he's got to hope that everyone that's committed to voting for him under 55, and there's more of them, 19 million versus 13 million, he's got to hope that every one of those under 55 voting for him brings out a friend.
The debates, they are right around the corner, with today being the French debate, tomorrow is being the English debate. What kind of topics will the leaders of each party be discussing?
So each debate has 5 topics. It'll be things like energy and climate. They're lumping those two in together. Trump and the tariffs, obviously, is going to be one of them. Building the economy is another one. So these are the issues that they're going through. Both debates are in Montreal. The French debate is being hosted by a guy named Patrice Roy, a longtime CBC Radio Canada journalist, well respected across the province of Quebec. And then the English debate is being hosted by Steve Paikin. He is the host of a show called The Agenda here on Ontario's public broadcaster, TVO. And he's hosted these many times before. He is not an opinion journalist at all, and generally perceived as a straight shooter, not someone who's going to try and put their thumb on the scale. So that's why he's hosting. And it's just that one moderator. It's 120 minutes each. I'll tell you this, Mark Carney wants as many other leaders on that stage with him as possible, because the more people attacking him, the better it is for him. He's kind of the incumbent. He's definitely the front runner. And when you're getting yelled at by a lot of people, the audience at home sits back and goes, well, being kind of mean to him. And it works in their favor.
Buttongate, Brian. I want to get into Buttongate. People might be wondering, what is that? Earlier this week, Liberal leader Mark Carney, he apologized for the Liberal campaign workers passing out buttons at the Canada Strong and Free conference in Ottawa. What are your thoughts on this whole Buttongate thing?
Yeah, this is an old tradition in politics, but normally it's just about making fun of your opponent. And so there were buttons that had Jenny Byrne, the campaign manager's name, crossed out, and then Corey Tonight put underneath it, saying that Pierre should fire Jenny. There were ones that just made fun of the Conservatives, and that's normal. But it's the ones that said, stop the steal, and do you believe the polls? These are attempts to say that the Conservatives are just like Donald Trump. So that's why I think these ones cross the line. Look, here's an old button from the 2006 Liberal Convention. I don't know if you can see that. It says Uncle Iggy wants you, and it's Michael Ignatieff, who was running back then, didn't win. You have Vote Bob. Who needs Ontario anyway? Referencing back to Bob Rae's disastrous time as Ontario Premier. There's a lot of these things. If they're in good fun, that's fine. If you're trying to fool people to make them believe that these guys are something they're not, you could be in trouble with the law. A few lawyers have looked at it and said this could violate the Elections Act, could be a violation of the law. We'll see where that goes, if anything. The 2 staffers in charge of it, who this came out in a story because they were boasting about it in bars in earshot of journalists. They've simply been reassigned. They haven't been fired. They're just given different jobs in the campaign, no longer making buttons.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, he announced this week that he would pass a law to bring back consecutive life sentences after the Supreme Court shut down this law in 2022. He says that he will be using the notwithstanding clause to keep mass murderers behind bars. How are the other leaders reacting to this statement?
Strangely, they're not going with where I think the mood of the public would be. And they're saying, well, we have to defend the charter. We have to stop this from happening. Look, there was a law in place to allow this. And so when Alexandre Bissonnette did the Quebec City mosque shooting, I think that was 2017, he was given a 40-year sentence, um, so that he would not be out of jail until he was 60 years old. So he got 40 years instead of 25 before he's eligible for parole. The court struck down this law, saying it was cruel and unusual. And, it had only applied to a few people. You had to be a mass murderer. Um, I believe it was Justin Bork who killed the three Mounties in New Brunswick. Apologies if I got the name wrong there, going off memory. He also got a very long sentence. And these sentences were struck down by the court, saying it was cruel and unusual punishment. Well, Polyev says he'll bring it back and he'll use the notwithstanding clause. I don't know anyone that says, yeah, mass murderers should get out faster. But Mark Carney was asked about it, and he said, we can't do this because it would be a violation of the charter. He's absolutely wrong, because the notwithstanding clause is part of the charter. It's section 33 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which allows Parliament or a provincial legislature to overrule the courts. And that was a negotiated part of getting the charter accepted and passed. So Mark Carney ends up looking like he's standing on the side of criminals rather than standing on the side of protecting society and looking out for victims.
Brian, I'm interested in your thoughts on the NDP and Jagmeet Singh, because they are in a drastically different position than what they were several months ago. They are in single-digit support across the country. They've been dramatically falling in the polls, and obviously voters are moving over to the Liberal Party. Jagmeet even seems to be giving in by saying he's not running for prime minister, but just hoping for enough seats so that there's not a majority government. What are your thoughts?
I don't understand this. You've got the NDP down at 8%, 6% in some polls. I think their best showing recently, but this was a week or two ago, was 11%. They're headed to not perhaps having official party status. And a good chunk of that support, not all of it, but a good chunk of it has gone to Mark Carney and the Liberals, which is why they're ahead of Polyev and the Conservatives. Pierre Polyev and the Conservatives are still at 38, 39%, depending on the polls. Stephen Harper won his majority government with with less than that in 2011. Justin Trudeau won his majority government in 2015 with 37% in the polls. This should be enough to form government, but the NDP has utterly collapsed, and the Liberals are the beneficiaries. Who would have thought that the socialist NDP would be all in favor of a central banker, Goldman Sachs past employee who just resigned from running one of Canada's one of the world's biggest asset management companies. But that's where the NDP is at the moment. Jagmeet Singh, he showed up with a lot of promise several years ago to take over after Tom Mulcair, but he hasn't been delivering. Let's put it that way.
What do you think is going on with Carney's taxes? I want to talk about that. Do you think voters that they have received a clear answer from the Liberal Party about Carney's taxes?
Well,
there seems to be a lot of things behind the scenes here.
It's still coming up. He did have to answer questions about his personal income taxes this past week. When the NDP and Conservatives started pointing out that, Brookfield was using tax havens in Bermuda and the Cayman Islands, I thought, well, if you're going to dodge taxes for your company, what's to say you wouldn't dodge, paying taxes here in Canada? It took almost a week to get an answer to the simple question of where did Mark Carney pay his taxes since coming back to Canada in 2020. They put out very strange statements, and still, I would say they haven't answered that question fully. The issue of taxes and tax havens and his asset holdings, these are all questions that make him very testy, as does China. I'm sure you caught it last week where he snapped at a reporter for asking a question about China. So that's going to be an interesting part of the debate. Both Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney have tempers, and they can lose them. Whoever is able to keep themselves under control and get under the skin of the other leader is going to have the better debate night. And given the fact that Poilievre has years of experience and training at this, I'd say that it's likely that he will be able to keep his cool. And the question will be, will Mark Carney be able to keep his cool as Poilievre raises these issues in a live televised debate, because you know that one way or another, he's going to find a way to get in a shot about dodging taxes, and Carney's going to respond. Will he respond calmly, or will we see that anger that seeps out sometimes at journalists pop up?
Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much, Brian. We've run out of time here, but I so appreciate your thoughts diving into some of these issues that are very important, that as us Canadians move towards the polls on April 28th, we need to have an understanding about what's going on. We'll be back right after this. Well, welcome back to Merit TV Canada's election coverage. Lots that we covered with Brian Lilley. He's got some great thoughts, great opinions. He's on the ground every day gathering information. I hope we gave you something to think about. Hope you learned a couple things about his opinions, but also going forward towards this election. Again, this is a snap election. There's a lot happening in a very short period of time. I know we all have lives that we live, different things that we do, but it is very important, us as Canadians, using our voice, using the way that we can express by voting, understanding what does each party stand for, not just following for a slogan or voting, not even honestly, we should be aware of who our local MP is and who we're actually voting for. What does the leader of the party stand for? What does the party stand for? Right now, it's a very interesting election because we have one party, the Liberal Party, that has been in power for the last 10 years under a different leader, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But you've got a good idea as to what they believe, what they enacted, and the results that they reaped from what they did for the last 10 years. Now they're under a new leader. Are they going to be different? Are they going to continue to enact the same things they did for the last 10 years? Because guess what? If that's the case, we will continue to get the same results. Mark Carney has doubled down on several policies that the Liberal Party has enacted over the last 10 years, but yet we're still waiting for a policy platform. You got to be reaching up to your MP if it's Liberal, saying, when is this platform coming out? We need to know before we're going to the polls. We got to look at that. We got to find out what the Conservatives believe. What are they planning on doing? There's lots of great slogans and great talk that you might think, but do they have real plans that's going to bring significant change? My opinion, the number one thing that we need to be aware of is not Donald Trump, is not tariffs. It is actually, what is our own economic outlook look like? What does the wealth of Canada look like going forward? What plans are we doing to make money and investment come to Canada? What are we doing to invite people to say, hey, we want to attract the best workers, the smartest brains. We're investing in industry that actually can reap a return. We actually are doing policies where we're not going to spend more than we make. That's a basic principle that every household should be living by. Our country should try to do the same. We need to slow down ballooning debt. How are we going to do that? What are areas in our country that is completely wasteful? How can we champion the citizen? How can we cut bureaucracy so that we can see free enterprise rise up? Because stats have shown, and we actually have history to show us, free enterprise has actually lifted and elevated people out of poverty. We can make the world a better place. Canada can be the center of that if we are electing and bringing in governments to bring forth the best for Canadians. Stick with us as we continue through this path. This is Merit TV Canada. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.